YouTube, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. So today guys, we are gonna talk about Kashtiras and how it will affect Master Duel once its full support comes out. Before anything else, I do like to apologize to you guys for not creating content in a daily basis. It is almost 2 weeks now that I am like this. It is due because my kid is going into her toddler years and I would like to be part of it. Taking care of her. As you might know, my regular free time is during at night. That is why I do my recordings at night and my stream at night. Hopefully in the near future, once everything is settled, like my kid will be sleeping properly, so that we can go back into our regular streaming schedule and upload schedule as well. So bear with me for a couple of weeks guys, and hope you understand. Anyways, let's get back into the video. So with regards to the support for Kashtiras coming into Master Duel, we are going to tackle 5 points for this topic, and that is what decks will occupy the tier list once the supports comes in, what makes Kashtira really strong, third, why was Kashtira really good in the TCG, fourth, why Kashtira underperformed in the OCG, and lastly, and this is the final summation, whether or not Kashtira is really a tier 0 or a tier 1 deck. Now, I have placed a poll in my community tab asking whether or not the Kashtira will be a tier 0 deck or a tier 1. It was a 51-50 ratio wherein people are saying Kashtiras are going to be tier 0. But hopefully this video will be insightful to you guys and you'll be decide whether or not Kashtira is going to be a tier 0 or not. With that out of the way, let's go into our first topic, which is the decks that will occupy the tier list. Now, for the sake of this video, I will only tackle the decks that is currently here in the tier list, and we are not going to go beyond that. If ever we'll go beyond that, we are going to take up more time. So, a couple of things that I want to take note for the tier list. It is very diverse. I really like this type of tier list. It really balances most of the decks. It's not like before when tier elements was tier 0 and the rest of the decks were tier 3 or lower. It was really cracked before. Now it's very diverse. I really like it. So Purelist will retain its position on a tier 1. This is a really strong and consistent deck. Furthermore, having to rely only with one monster on the field will get you most of your wins, and having the ability to recycle back the cards after your monster is going to be sent to the graveyard is quite insane. Dragon Links, on the other hand, would go down one tier lower. I am hoping that this deck would retain its spot on the tier 1 once Kashtiras gets its support. Dragon Link in going first will have a better chance of winning going up against a Kashtira deck. But if you're going second up against a Kashira deck, it would be really hard for you to actually garner you a win. Tier 2, I do believe Labyrinth against a Kashira deck is quite formidable. Having to have a copy of Dimensional Barrier ready for you and having access to a Kaiju or a copy of Nibiru in their arsenal really gets them a long way. Furthermore, I've seen some other builds in Labyrinth wherein they use a 1 copy of Skill Drain. Skill Drain is a really good trap card that can counter a Kashtira on the field. The only downside for that is it's only 1 copy. Nevertheless, it is still a really strong deck and it will still retain its tier 2 status. Tier 3, on the other hand, there are a variety of decks here. Soul, I do hope that this will retain its spot in the tier 3. This is still a really strong synchro-based deck. Whether going first or going second, it can garner them a lot of wins. Naturia Runic, it's kind of hard for the Naturia Runic to face Kashtiras. Banishing cards for Runic will be somewhat beneficial for the Kashtira deck rather than it would benefit you. Having to banish a Kashtira monster and have your opponent access it with a copy of Birth or Preparation is quite insane. Furthermore, Big Bang will allow them to spell summon another Kashira monster from an exi summon that they detached. And I do think this will actually go down 1 tier lower or removed from the tier list in general. And we have Rika Sanavalon and Mathmech. I do believe they have the same principle as Dragon Links on whether if they are going first or second. If they can manage to go first and set up a really good board, then it will be really hard for Kashtira to actually perform. But if they're going second, it will be really hard for them to actually make a really good board. And then we have Branded Despia. I think Branded Despia will be removed from the tier list entirely. Having to rely mostly with 1 copy of Branded Fusion can get them nowhere. As long as it is going to be negated, then it will be a problem for the Branded Despia deck. Furthermore, with the Kashtiras on the field, it is easy enough for them to actually remove cards from the field, from the graveyard, from the deck, and from the extra deck, removing their significant cards face down. So removing a copy of Mirror Jade is somewhat detrimental for the deck as well. So I'm not sure if they can actually counter this deck if ever. But anyways, that is the tier list. Tell me your insights about this, and let's go towards our second topic. Alright, so for our second topic is what makes Kashtira really strong. So first and foremost guys, I would like to ask you a question. What makes a really strong deck be part of the tier list. So for me guys, it is consistency. So that is what the new supports for the Kashiras is gonna bring into the field, and having 2 copies of Fenrir and 3 copies of Unicorn will get them an advantage in every turn for that matter. So you'll expect from a Kashtira deck every turn they'll have like 2 level 7s on the board that they can go into a Shangri-Ara, possibly 2 or 3 monsters on the board, which one of that would be a copy of a Rysart. Furthermore, Kashira has their own effects that can get them a copy of a trap card, a spell card, or a monster from their deck and extend their plays to more Kashiras on the field. Secondly, they have their trigger effects that can banish cards face down, so that would be really insane for the archetype as well. The third and most valuable impact for the deck is the copy of a Rysart having to be a face-up back row Cosmos on the field and allowing to banish 1 card on the field face down if you can detach 3 materials from it. And on every chain, you can attach a material from the banish pile to a Rysart. For me, a Rysart is just the cherry on the cake, and the cake being all of the Kashtira cards. But the most significant card that skyrocketed Kashtira to tier 1 status was the monster Diablosis, the Mind Hacker. So this monster was so unfair that it can dissect the extra deck and remove cards from the top of your opponent's deck face down. So it is an insanely good card to pair with the Kashtira archetype. So with that idea, let's go towards our third topic. Why was Kashtira really good in the TCG? So first and foremost, and this is quite important for the TCG, there was no Maxi. Maxi in Master Duel, if you haven't noticed, is a really good floodgate to most of the special summon decks or any combo based decks for that matter, allowing your opponent to stop the spell summon. If not, you are allowing to garner more card advantage. In the TCG for that matter, if you are dealt with a really bad hand, then typically you have no chance of winning up against a Kashtira or a full-fledged Kashtira deck. A second reason for this and why Kashtira is really good in the TCG is they have 3 copies of Fenrir and 2 copies of Unicorn beforehand, and that is very significant in its own sense. The Fenrir and the Unicorn are 2 of the important cards in the Kashtira lineup. Unicorn having to get access to a copy of Theosis, the field spell, and even the copy of Birth, allowing you to extend to more plays or Kashtira monsters on the field. The Fenrir, on the other hand, will grant you access to any Kashtira monster for that matter, and any activation of the monster effects on your opponent's side of the field, you can instantly banish. And we will talk about these 2 cards once we get into the OCG part. But for our third reason on why Kashtira is really broken in the TCG is basically on every turn, you always have a face-up Kashtira on the field, plus a copy of a Rysart and a copy of Shangri-Ara that allows you to garner a lot of wins. Fourth and fifth reason is Prosperity and the field spell for the Kashtiras are accessible on 3 copies in the TCG, so it is easy enough to garner them a quick Kashtira on hand and allowing you to gain more card advantage. This might not be really important for you, but like I said earlier, consistency for a deck in getting a hold of an important card for your arsenal, and the sooner you'll get it, the more chances of you winning that game. That being said, the last and final reason why Kashtira was really good in the TCG was because Diablosis and a Rysart was still viable that time before the ban list. Now that is our third topic. Our fourth topic is why did Kashtira underperform in the OCG? Well, typically, I will show you a quick graph on the board or a quick pie chart on the board. So this is typically the meta beforehand in the OCG when tier elements was in full power and Kashtira was in full power. And like I said in my previous video, a full powered Kashtira can't defeat a full powered tier element before. This is one of the reasons why this pie chart exists, and that is why tier elements was hit dramatically after the following months. Now, after a few months from that, the hits to tier element was really significant. They banned Kit Callus. They removed a copy of Reinhardt to 1 copy only. I think the Havness was limited to 1 as well. So you might think that Kashtira is going to occupy the spot. Well, typically you're wrong, because during that ban list as well, they also limited a copy of Fenrir and the Unicorn, which are 2 significant cards, like I said, for the deck. So allowing you to access any Kashtira monster with a Fenrir, and the Unicorn that allows you to access any spell card for a Kashtira was targeted for the ban list. And that was significant enough to nerf the deck for the Kashtira dramatically. And then after that ban list, tier elements was still really playable because majority of their monsters and the Ishizu cards was still playable at that time on multiple copies. Sprites came along the way and occupied the spot for the Kashtiras. And yeah, Kashira fell off the board after the limitation to Fenrir to 1 and the Unicorn to 1. And the final reason why Kashtira underperformed in the OCG is because Maxi was available to them. So Maxi, like I said earlier, as long as you have a copy of 1 Nibiru or 1 Kaiju on your deck, and you drop a copy of Maxi, you're evidently lucky enough to get a hold of that one copy of Nibiru or a copy of a Kaiju. Furthermore, the problem with Kashtiras, they don't really have a really good protection other than the Shangri-Ira on the field. So if ever they get wiped with a copy of Nibiru, then that's basically their board. Your opponent can access easily a copy of Kaijus, which they can use on the next turn. So that is basically all of the data that I have uncovered for the Kashtira on both TCG and OCG. Now for the final summation, of course, will Kashtira be a tier 0 deck or just typically a tier 1 deck? In my own opinion, it will be a tier 1 deck, but with a format of best of 1 for Master Duel, I think it really goes down into who is going first up against the Kashtira archetype. Pre-release is still really strong at the current state. I think they are going to be a really good contender in both of the archetypes. So let's see in the near future if I am correct. So tell me your thoughts on this topic, guys. Will Kashtira be a tier 0 deck or basically just a tier 1 deck for that matter? Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below, and I would like to know your input about this video. And like and subscribe for more contents, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.